That's me in the corner trying to explain what this task was all about. Sadly, I didn't have the microphone switched on, so I'll have to explain what I was doing. This was really a bit of a lost hope for a friend. She'd spent time as a child in Africa and held on to this turned and bored length in two parts as a memory of the time she spent there. It had been stored in poor conditions with other wood that had suffered and succumbed to insects, but this, although dulled and a little watermarked, had remained intact and very solid. It was unusually heavy for its size, which made me curious, and in search of African woods, the closest I found to colour, density and grain was Ekki, one of the few woods to sink in water. It was already turned and drilled for an electrical cable, but needed a sturdy base to support it. A dark wood base would fail to show this in its full beauty, so I hand-planed a very old, rough piece of dense oak I had had for several years. As you can see, I had a bit of a nightmare, a panic when I first rubbed it down because it just lost whatever life it seemed to have. But then as I was washing it down in methylated spirits or denatured alcohol, it just came up. It came up beautifully. Then with a bit more sanding, it was in pretty good condition. No rot, no wear. I managed to get some shellac onto it. The first coat of shellac, of course, is sort of 2 parts shellac, 3 parts denatured alcohol or methylated spirits. I get the methylated spirits without the blue dye because that can sometimes affect paler woods. Probably wouldn't matter on such dark wood as this, but I had to be careful to make sure that the finish was clear. As I'm putting it on, I'm trying to get into all the little nooks and crannies. Each additional layer of shellac, of course, kind of merges with the one below. It dissolves it in effect and creates a second coat. So this is the first coat of shellac going onto one of the longer pieces. The two pieces just slot together. It's very tight, very clean join when it goes together. It's obviously been beautifully well made and turned originally, but getting the shellac to really pop the grain was quite difficult. So you can see here I'm trying to get all the way around all the little angles to make sure that there's enough shellac on there, not too much to make it thick and sticky because it does dry pretty quickly, but just to make sure that it was looking good. And again, in the second piece, just getting into those angles. I didn't want to go over the end because that's where it joins in, and I didn't want the shellac to ever cause the two to stick together. They're wedged in really well. It's a really tight fit, and it's very secure, so I didn't really want to do anything different with that. Set the timer for 45 minutes for the first coat of shellac, and after that start to rub it down. I was rubbing it down with 400 just to get the shine of just a teeny bit, and then the second coat goes on. You can see here that it's a much shinier, brighter, deeper, richer finish with the second coat of shellac. This is pure shellac now. And you can see my panic about losing the finish was a bit unnecessary. As you can see, it's really bringing the grain through. Set the timer for 1 hour this time for the second coat to dry, and then you can see how much better that's coming through. But again, just rub it down very, very gently just to denib it. Then this third coat, taking a little bit more care, I suppose, making sure it doesn't blob, and then you can see the final outcome. Such a beautiful, beautiful wood. To say it's been stored in damp conditions for years, 20 years, I think. It looks fantastic. But then, once that was finished, I needed to create a base for it because that's all she had. It had a lot of fond memories for her. So it was quite important to make sure that the base was suitable. So I had an old piece of oak that had been just lying around and was always wondering what to do with it. I don't have a planer thicknesser jointer, so I did it all by hand. But using a Stanley Sweetheart plane number 4 It's a really nice plane, fits very nicely in the hand. It takes very, very fine shavings, as you can see, and it didn't take too long to get this down, and beautifully flat. Got one edge as well. I was going to plane both sides. I wasn't going to put it through the table saw. And then this, just taking the corners off, just rounding it off a little bit on the sander, and then looking for a suitable abrasive. I used 180 and then 240 on this, just to get the thing as fine as I could. Finding a centre then, because I needed to put a hole in for the stand to drop into. I didn't want any mechanical fixings. I wanted this to be just a friction fit, the same as the two parts of the stand. So using a brad to get the centre. It doesn't look it too much, but that wood is beautifully smooth. I'm getting a 25mm or a 1-inch spade bit. Started it very, very, very gently. I really didn't want to have any tear out on either side. So cut through on one side, about halfway, maybe a little more than halfway through. And then to avoid any tear out, turned it over and cut from the other side. And then that worked pretty effectively. And you can see there, I've just ended up with a little washer. So then just cleaning out the inside, making sure it's very smooth, and then having it on a post just so I can add some shellac first of all, and then some wax. I used bry wax, which, as it was a warm day, it went on really quickly, really smoothly. Had a beautiful finish to it. Putting it on with a gentle scouring pad just to make sure that it takes any nibbing out. And then the second coat of wax goes on with a rubber, just to make sure that everything's very smooth and level and evened out. And then the feet, because it's going to have a wire running down through it, I needed to make sure that there was a feet just to create a little gap at the bottom for the wire to run out and along a tabletop. So I had some rosewood and I used that, which smoothed down beautifully well. So I rubbed off the shellac and the wax finish on the bottom of the base and just simply glued it on. I used external waterproof PVA glue, thinking that would be the most perfect and most permanent way of securing it. And then just making sure that it doesn't rock. I had it on a flat surface to make sure. It rocked a little bit to start with, even though I'd cut them very carefully, but just sanded down so it stopped rocking at all. And then finally, the two come together, and it's a beautiful, tight friction fit. And there's a finished object. And the client added a rather nice wood lampshade. Hope you like it.